If you don't understand Bitcoin, you don't understand money. The dollar in your wallet is losing value right now. Not because the economy's bad, not because your bank made a mistake, because of a decision made on a Sunday night in August 1971 that most Americans were never taught about in school. A decision that quietly broke the rules of money for every person alive today. Bitcoin was built as the direct answer to that broken system. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how money actually works, why it's working against you, and what Bitcoin changes in dollars and cents terms you can measure yourself.
There is exactly one fact you need to understand to make sense of everything in this video. Every dollar you have ever earned, saved, or been paid is worth less today than the day you received it. Not slightly less, not rounding error less. The dollar has lost more than 85% of its purchasing power since 1971. That means a dollar from 1971 buys what 12 cents buys today. The grocery bill your parents paid in 1975, the house your neighbor bought in 1985, the retirement savings your coworker put away in 1995, all of it quietly taxed by a system most people never saw coming. Here is why it happened. For most of American history, the dollar was tied to gold. The government could only print as many dollars as it had gold to back them. That was the restraint. That was the rule.
On August 15, 1971, President Nixon went on national television and removed that rule. The dollar was cut loose from gold entirely. Overnight, money stopped being a receipt for something real and became a promise backed by nothing except faith in the government. Nixon called it a temporary measure. The gold window never reopened. From that night forward, the Federal Reserve could create as many dollars as it chose, and it has. Between February 2020 and early 2022 alone, the U.S. money supply expanded by roughly 40% in less than 2 years. 4 decades of dollar creation compressed into 24 months. That is not a rounding error. That is the engine of every price increase you have felt at the grocery store, the gas pump, and the car lot since 2021.
The money did not disappear. It did not evaporate. It simply became worth less because there was more of it competing for the same amount of goods. That is how inflation actually works, not as a weather event, as a policy choice. Now consider what that means for a person named Sandra. Sandra is 58 years old. She has spent 30 years working, saving, and doing the right things. She has $200,000 in a savings account at her local bank, earning the national average rate, which as of right now is around 0.4%. That $200,000 earned Sandra $800 a year in interest. Inflation over the past 4 years has averaged roughly 5% annually. At 5% inflation, $200,000 loses about $10,000 in purchasing power every single year. Sandra is earning $800, she is losing $10,000. She is not breaking even. She is losing $9,200 a year in real terms on money she believes is safe. Over 10 years, that is $92,000 in purchasing power that quietly disappears from her account without a single transaction being made, without a single fee being charged, and without anyone at her bank sending her a letter about it. Sandra did not make a bad investment. She made no investment at all, and the system punished her for it anyway. Every disaster in the rest of this video is that savings erosion operating at a larger scale. Bitcoin was designed as the precise opposite of what happened in 1971. It is a digital currency with a supply that is fixed by mathematics, not by the government. The total number of Bitcoin that will ever exist is 21 million. Not 21 million today and more tomorrow if the government needs it. Not 21 million unless there is a crisis. 21 million. Full stop. Coded into the protocol. Unchangeable by any president, any central bank, or any bank on earth. As of March 2026, the 20 millionth Bitcoin was mined. More than 95% of all Bitcoin that will ever exist already exists. The remaining coins will trickle into circulation over the next 114 years, not flood the market overnight.
Here is the number that matters most. Bitcoin's current annual supply increase is less than 0.85%. The US dollar's money supply grew 40% in 2 years. Gold, which most people consider the ultimate scarce asset, grows by roughly 1.5 to 2% per year as new gold is mined. Bitcoin is already scarcer than gold, by a mathematical certainty that no government can override. That scarcity is enforced by a mechanism called the halving. Every 4 years, the rate at which new Bitcoin is created gets cut in half. When Bitcoin launched in 2009, miners earned 50 Bitcoin per block, then 25,
then 12.5, then 6.25. In April 2024, it dropped again to 3.125. At current rates, roughly 450 new Bitcoin enter circulation per day. The next halving arrives in April 2028. After that, only 225 new Bitcoin per day. The clock runs in one direction.
This is not a marketing claim. It is not a white paper promise. It is a schedule that has operated without interruption for 17 years. Through crashes, through crises, through the bankruptcy of major exchanges, through every attempt to disrupt it. The supply has never been altered. Not once. Compare that to the dollar, which was altered on a Sunday night with 15 minutes of television and no vote. Return to Sandra. Suppose Sandra had put the same $200,000 into Bitcoin in January 2020, when Bitcoin was trading at approximately $7,200. By October 2025, Bitcoin reached an all-time high of roughly $126,000.
That is a price increase of approximately 17.5 times in under 6 years. Sandra's $200,000 would have grown to roughly $3.5 million over that period. Now, that is not a prediction. It is a historical fact about a specific window. Bitcoin is volatile. It has dropped 77% in a single cycle. Anyone who puts money into Bitcoin needs to understand they can and will see dramatic drawdowns along the way. But here is the number that is never discussed in the same breath. The dollar lost more than 20% of its purchasing power over the same period. Sandra's $200,000 in savings earned $4,000 in interest and lost roughly $40,000 in real purchasing power. One asset grew, one asset shrank. Both were described to Sandra as safe. There is one more thing about Bitcoin that most people who dismiss it have never actually sat down and thought about.
Bitcoin is the first asset in human history where the supply schedule is public, verifiable, and enforced by code rather than by any institution. You do not have to trust a central bank. You do not have to trust a government. You do not have to trust a CEO. You can verify the supply yourself right now by running a Bitcoin node or opening a public blockchain explorer. When the Federal Reserve expanded the money supply by 40% between 2020 and 2022, there was no public vote. There was no referendum. There was a meeting and a press release. When Bitcoin's supply schedule changes, which it does every 4 years on a published timetable, every person on Earth can watch it happen in real time on a public ledger. That is not a technical distinction. That is the difference between a promise and a proof.
The people who understand Bitcoin best are not the ones who got rich off it. They are the ones who understand what it is actually competing against. It is not competing against stocks. It is not competing against real estate. It is competing against the dollar as a place to store the value of your work over time. And when you measure it against that standard, the question is not why would you consider Bitcoin? The question is why would you leave your life savings in an instrument that loses value by design, managed by an institution that has already demonstrated it will expand supply whenever it decides to? Sandra's $200,000 is sitting in an account right now earning $800 a year.
The system losing her $10,000 a year in purchasing power does not make headlines. It does not send her a notification. It does not feel like anything at all. That is how the system stays invisible. And now you know how it works. If you want to understand what inflation has already cost you in real dollars, and what even a small Bitcoin allocation would have changed about your financial picture over the last 5 years, then you should start doing the math by yourself. Hit like if this changed how you see money. Subscribe if you want to keep doing the math, and I will see you in the next one.